I'll get those numbers for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's been quite an experience, quite a journey getting this facility up and going. And as I said, Glenn was really a driving force. There were times when we thought, Archie and I thought, this is gone, this is dead. But Glenn really helped to keep it alive, so that was great. The whole experience was much like home. I was told by more county staff, and I can recall, we know what's best for you. Just go along with us. So it's been lively. We're going to move right along. A lot of things that are happening around us, affect the way we do business, are also changing. And the law is changing as well. And we're very fortunate today to have Cam Prowse. Not only is a good guy to have around, but he's also legal counsel and a practicing lawyer. He's going to talk to you for just a minute about the whole concept of stables and the law.
I told Gary that my presentation would probably take 2, maybe 3 minutes. And what I'm hoping is that there will be some questions that will help flesh it out. I am Cam Prowse, I'm a lawyer. My family moved to the county in 1978, and we moved to our farm in 2003. We got our, I've been interested in horses since watching The Lone Ranger, Roy Rogers, all the John Wayne movies, of course. We got our first horse in 1998 when my eldest daughter was able to convince me that she should take riding lessons. And as I say, now we have a farm and horses, and we do a little bit of boarding. And I got invited by Gary to become involved with the Stable Owners Association. I'd had contact with Gary over the years about the continuing efforts to get the facility designed, approved, and built, and so I'm quite excited to see that it's actually coming to fruition. I can't wait to go out and see it in May or June when the tours get started. One of the purposes of the association is education. And part of education is somebody standing up at a lectern and telling you things, but part of education is being able to pick up the phone or send a text or an email to somebody who has experience, somebody who's been through an issue before and can help with that. And that's one of the things that the association has been doing, and we've had a number of contacts from people who've run into problems or issues that they haven't run into before, and they don't know how to deal with them. And it's everything from how do I keep my waterers from freezing to I had a boarder, I still have their gear, I still have their horse, but they stopped paying me, and I'm feeding the animal, and I don't want to keep feeding it, what do I do? My first involvement with what was then the Livery Stable Keepers Act was when I was an articling student. We had a client named Donsdale Stables, and they ran into some problems where somebody had ordered some horses with them and then just abandoned them and stopped paying. The Livery Stable Keepers Act has been replaced by a new act called the Animal Keepers Act. And it applies to more than just livery stables now. It applies to anybody who boards or feeds or cares for an animal owned by somebody else. And so it doesn't have to be a horse or a mule anymore. It applies to any kind of an animal. So if somebody leaves their alpaca with you, then you've got the Animal Keepers Act that can help you out if you run into a situation where somebody stops paying. The act is really quite, it's a simple act and it's quite straightforward. And it's geared to help the stable owner or the animal keeper without having to go through a long legal process, an expensive legal process. Because when they were drafting the act, they apparently realized that not everybody can afford to hire a lawyer. And if your claim is $2,000 or $3,000 or $500 because somebody stopped paying, then of course it makes no economic sense for you to try and hire a lawyer to deal with it. So what they've said is, you have a lien, and a lien is a claim, and your claim is in first place, and it starts as soon as somebody owes you money for care and board of their animal. The lien takes priority over anybody else who has a claim on it, and you're entitled to hang on to, whether it's a horse or a mule or a horse trailer or a saddle or any or all of the above. You're entitled to keep them until you get paid. But you don't have to keep them forever. 14 days is the magic number. Yeah, 14 days is all. If somebody's late for 14 days, you can actually sell their animal and or their gear to get yourself paid. Now then, there is a bit of a process that you have to go through as far as giving appropriate notice under the Act. It's not complicated. It's, you sell by public auction, but that doesn't mean that you have to bring in an auction company, and it doesn't mean that you have to cart all the gear and or the horse to an auction site. You can actually have the auction on your own property. But you don't have to have an auction either. If you can find a better way to get a better price, then you can do that as well, as long as it's commercially reasonable. And I had one situation a few years ago, I guess it's more than a few now, it's a number of years ago. The claim exceeded $100,000 because somebody had left about 50 horses and then stopped paying for them. And you can imagine the cost to feed 50 horses on an ongoing basis. Well, we were able to actually sell some of the horses. They were actually pedigreed horses and purebred horses. And we were actually able to sell them, and then we were able to convince the registries that they should register the new owners as the legal owners of the horses. So they were actually able to sell the horses for, one of them went for $10,000, one of them went for $15,000, and we were able to actually recover all of the money that was owed to the stable owner at the time. So there's a lot of power in the Act, and as I said earlier, it's designed to help the stable owner, so the stable owner isn't the one who ends up taking the beating. It even applies if somebody parks their horse trailer on your land, and maybe they're paying you, $25 a month or $15 a month, or maybe you're doing it as a favor while you board their horse. If they stop paying for the horse, you got to lean on the trailer as well. So there's a lot of power there. And that's about as simple as the Act is. Does anyone have any questions?
What if the horse isn't worth what they owe you and it's just like 35 years old and 1 foot in the grave?
Well, one of the alternatives that you would have would be to sell it to the renderer. And there are lots of people who simply wouldn't do that because they couldn't. But that would be an option that would be open to the stable owner.
And would it be an option to just have the horse euthanized? Or
Uh,
you have to sell the horse?
I think that if you had a public auction and somebody bought the horse for $5, they could euthanize it. If you had a public auction and nobody bought the horse, then you could bid on the horse, because you're the one who's owed the money.
Yeah.
So you bid on the horse, and you could then have the horse euthanized because you would then own the horse.
And then is there other recourse to recoup the lost money?
Sorry,
Like, so if the horse is not worth with how much they owe you, is there something else you can do then to recoup the missing money?
absolutely. If they still owe you money after the auction, you still have a claim against them, you could still go after them in small claims court.
Okay. Thank you.
Just hope the horse comes with a trailer.
I can. I've been through the Stable Keepers Act on the old one a couple of times, unfortunately. The biggest important thing is to make sure you post it, and that when you bring in order, that you explain it.
You actually don't have to post it anymore.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's even better.
Yeah, you don't have to post it anymore, although I would suggest that it's still a good idea. And you don't have to explain it to anybody, it's the law, and everybody is presumed to know the law whether they actually do or not. So, you're not prohibited because you forgot to explain it to someone.
Oh, that's great.
Any other questions?
Make it work.
Hi, I'm just wondering about required notice. So you have a horse, then you have all this stuff, is there a required notice period or something to let the owner know, hey, this is what I'm gonna do? Or in particular, when you have horses that are worth a lot, sometimes there's multiple owners as well. So maybe you only deal with Sally, but Joe and Frank also own part? Would there be required notice to those other two owners?
The notice would be required, and off the top of my head, I don't recall whether you'd have to give notice to all of the owners. It seems to me that you have to give notice to the person who brought the animal to you for board. You certainly have a claim against each of the owners for all of the money that's owed to you. I'd have to take a quick look at the act to determine whether you actually have to give notice to all of the owners. That would probably be the advice I would probably give is, if you have their contact information, even if you're not required to, do it, because there's a much better chance somebody will get hold of you and write a check, because they'll say, I didn't know that Billy wasn't paying the bill.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So you have a boarder that has a horse with you, and they're, maybe like 3 or 4 months in arrears. And they've expressed an interest in selling the horse because they can't afford the horse, but they have not taken any action to prepare the horse to be sold. They haven't had any ads put out for the horse. They haven't had anybody come and look at the horse. At what point, like this act, would get the owner of the stable the amount owing for the horse, and the owner of the stable is happy? And has the person that's left those stabling bills in arrears waived the possibility of ever getting their asking price for that horse? Like, at what point can you just sell the horse for what it's worth? Because I know you can't sell the horse for more money than what's owed.
Actually, you can sell the horse for more money than what's owed. If you're selling it pursuant to the act, then any money that's left goes back to them after you pay all of the expenses of the sale.
Right, and now you're acting as an agent on a sale that you didn't want to be an agent on.
Actually, you're not an agent, you simply have some obligations
Right.
under the act with regard to the funds, and there's a legal difference between being somebody's agent
Right,
and simply having a responsibility to refund the excess money that you might realize.
so other than just being kind enough to explain to them that all you need is your board money and you can sell their horse, you don't really have to be accountable for that extra funds.
Well, you're accountable for the extra funds, you have to pay them extra money you have to pay back to the horse owner.
Right. But if you don't, I mean, if you just sell that horse for what's owing,
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I have seen.
which is really all, you know, as the barn manager that's representing the barn owner, I just wanna get the barn owner their money.
Yes, and I have seen situations where the person who is owed the money, the stable owner, bids at the auction and bids up to the amount that they are owed, and they take ownership of the horse, and then 3 months later, they sell the horse for more money. And they're entitled to do that because it's their horse at that point.
Right, yeah, well, that's a totally different situation, but just in the interest of getting the funds that are owed, you could sell that horse for just what's owed.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that question,
Is there a time, holding time that owner, if they purchase that horse through auction, like you were just explaining, is there a holding period that they have to have that horse before it can be listed? Like, can't list it 24 hours later, 48 hours later? Is there a holding period of X number of days after the auction?
there's nothing in the act about a holding period. Once you buy it at auction, you become the owner. You could sell it 5 minutes later.
Okay.
And my question's is gonna open up a whole new can of worms then. As far as your board agreement with your clients, what kind of information such as this that we're talking about, you know, should you default on payment? Like, what kinds of things should be in your board agreement that you have all your clients sign up front so that they're aware and that will protect the stable owner?
The bylaws do
That's
that.
a loaded
That's-
question, sorry.
That's a big question. And it could have an expansive answer, but if I'm not mistaken, Gary, do we have a sample agreement on the website?
Don't think we do, but we have many sample agreements.
Yeah. Really, you don't need a written board agreement to be able to enforce your lien under the act. The moment that somebody places an animal with you and they're in arrears for payment, it triggers the 14-day period to start for you to be able to sell the animal. If you, and what you'll see is that most board agreements call for board to be payable on the first day of each month. So if you're not paid by the 15th of the month, then the act is triggered, but your lien starts as soon as you're not paid on the first day of the month. That would probably be the single most important thing to have in your board agreement, is that board is due on the first day of each month. The other things you want to do in your agreement, you want to make sure that you minimize the opportunities for people to argue that they didn't understand what charges were going to be. So you put in the amount for board, you put in the amount for training if there's going to be training, you put in any extras. You know, we charge an extra $1,000 a month to blanket your horse. We charge an extra $500 a day to give your horse vitamins. Make sure you itemize all of those things so that you minimize the possibility of misunderstanding or claimed misunderstandings later. And the more of those things that you can specify, the easier your life becomes later when you get into a fight. Some people will simply walk away and they don't care anymore. Some people, you'll be surprised to hear this, some people just like to fight.
14-day notice, and then from there, then the Library Act applies. But normally from experience says that, please remember everybody here, you can do that, but the owner will come back at you well, some of them come back at you, and it's most important to the court system that they know that you did your due diligence to make sure that that was clarified, that, you know, the terms of why the animal was there. The other fact is to support that, the judges will wanna know that you made that clear to the persons that own the horse and didn't pay. And the other thing is, stable owners are allowed to go after all the costs that involve that as well. So it's not just a matter of what they didn't pay me for the horse, but what all the applications and all the things do, you can get awarded with too.
Well, and when I alluded earlier to the costs, I was thinking of the costs of the sale. So if, for example, if you bring in an auctioneer and the auctioneer charges 20%, that's a cost of the sale. You have to publish a notice. If it costs money to publish the notice, that's a cost, and that goes on top of what you're entitled to recover. The whole idea is you're not out of pocket any money, assuming that the animals and or gear are worth more than the total amount of money that's owed to you. So ideally, there actually is money left over, and you write a small check back to the animal owner. But the object of the act is that the stable keeper won't be out money.
Hi, so, I'm gonna be a little bit of a devil's advocate here a little bit. So there is, some boarders do have excuses for not paying for their animals. I do know there's a 14-day grace on it, but there could be some factors in why the owner has not paid, like maybe they've been in a severe accident where they're incapacitated, where they cannot function beyond, at the moment, to pay, like is there been a surgery or they're, again, intensive care. Another thing could be an issue where I've had friends who have struggled with dark-hearted stables that would say that the person had not paid their fees and ended up selling the horse for their own profit. Is there some sort of way that the owner of the animal is somewhat protected under this act too? Because there could be a factor that there's a reason why they can't pay for the animal.
This is what I said before, is most people would rather not have to involve a lawyer. But if you run into a situation like that, then unfortunately, that's really all you've got. You need to get some legal help at that point in time, because it's gone beyond what the Animal Keepers Act is going to help out the situation, because the act is very much in favor of the stable owner. And so if there are issues between the owner and the stable owner and the animal owner, then unfortunately you probably need legal help at that point.
Just a suggestion, because I do feel you have due diligence to let people know what the rules are and so on. What we've done at our stable is we have a Google Drive folder, and it's called Client Info. And anything like the Stable Keepers Act, our price lists, what the feed contents are of things, our waivers, premise ID number, all that, it's all in there. And people get tired of me saying, well, it's in the folder. But it's easier on me, and I think people do appreciate it, because anything they want to know really is in there.
And that's actually really, really solid advice, because the more you communicate, the less opportunity there is for even a difficult person to become difficult.
Just one more quick question. question, and I'm going back, cause I'm old. And what do you consider appropriate for public notice? I don't think anybody reads a newspaper anymore, unfortunately. And like public notice in what way? Posting it at the facility? Posting it, I hate the thought, posting it on Facebook? What is considered appropriate public notice and fair?
Well, the act actually specifies exactly what your obligations are with regard to notice to the owner. If you know who the owner is, then you deliver a notice of your intended sale and the amount, so you deliver that to them personally, or send it by registered mail, or if you have a fax number for them that they gave you, you can fax it there. If they gave you an email address, you can give them notice by sending it to the email address that you gave you. And in addition, if the animal is a horse or if it's cattle, a cow or a bull or anything in between, then you have to give notice to the minister as well. If you don't know who the owner is, then 14 days before the sale, you publish a notice in the newspaper that is local. So the Sherwood Park News, for example, would be one, or the Edmonton Journal or the Edmonton Sun, if they still take those kinds of things. And it's pretty much that simple.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was way more questions than I anticipated.